guys? Welcome back. Oh, you know what? You know what I missed in this whole scenario? In this whole scenario, I missed the magic microphone. Are you ready for some microphone magic? Welcome back to Black Bear News, where everything is connected, except for my Wi-Fi or any of my equipment. You should be able to hear me. Yes, you can. If you can't hear me, then something is very wrong. Hello. Greetings. Good to see you all here. The early chatters are in. Chris Lai, the Epic Times. Yeah, exactly. Well, they run commercials on like every channel, and it's just they're pretty annoying. Back to BAU on BBN, indeed, business as usual. On your favorite channel of doom. It's not all doom and gloom now, is it, guys? Just mostly. Interesting. So, interesting backlash coming against Michael Moore in that channel. I talked about it a little bit the other day on Rockfin. And of course the backlash is, oh my God, you brought up overpopulation. That's one of the things. The other thing is that, all the super central, moderate, liberal capitalists, the happy capitalists don't want you to think that growth is bad or that the capitalist economy is evil. They want you to think that we can switch over to a, low or no emissions technology and everything's just going to be fine. And that's the whole point of that documentary, was to kind of blow that ideology out of the water, and they did that. Marie Telez asks, Kevin, you live in California. My daughter lives in Santa Monica. I've been there many times. It is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful there. It is. Your daughter is lucky. She lives in Santa Monica. Super lucky. I live far from the beach. I wish I lived closer. Because I would be there all the time. I would be there right now. Poppy Davis says, F capitalism and all isms. Indeed. Well, and so if a couple people joined me on the Rockfin thing the other day, but, somebody tweeted out that Michael Moore's documentary was eco-fascist, and oh my God, how, this is just a terrible, the worst documentary ever. Of course, he didn't have any really solid arguments as to why it was terrible. And I asked him point blank, I knew exactly what he was getting at. I said, are you mad because they brought up overpopulation? And his answer was yes, because it's racist. And a couple other people tried to jump in on that thread, saying that just saying overpopulation is racist. It's not. It is not. I mean, it could be racist. It could be racist if you allow the powers that be to deal with the problem without having a conversation about it. That could be racist, It could be racist if you allow, white supremacist, capitalist, globalist society to make decisions for you. And who gets to live and who gets to die. That could be racist. But this other woman tried to jump in too, talking about, oh yes, of course it's racist. And there's, the idea that we can't have growth, or that overpopulation is a problem is not scientifically sound, or, it's not a scientific idea. I was like, are you kidding? Are you insane? Are you high? Are you in touch at all with any kind of scientific reality? Apparently not. Because anybody, over the problem of overpopulation is about as simple as 2 + 2 = 4, 4 + 4 = 8, 8 + 8 = 16. It just, exponential growth is exponential, and eventually, it's as obvious as bacteria in a petri dish. And I didn't really have the energy to get like deeply into the conversation with her, but at least she had a conversation with me without blocking me, which is, at least slightly more mature than old Stone Kettle or whatever that guy's name is. But the guy who called Michael Moore eco-fascist got a lot of heat. And rightly so, because it's just, the problem isn't saying that, the possibility of bringing up overpopulation might create a racist response. I totally get it. And, historically, yeah, you see people that are concerned about overpopulation can sometimes be part of really bad organizations like the Nazi Party. That's not necessarily saying that everybody who's concerned about overpopulation is a Nazi or wants to kill people. That's just so ridiculous and reactionary. And the whole point of saying that is to stop the conversation, is to shut the conversation down and not have a conversation about overpopulation. If you don't want it to be racist, then overpopulation is a problem. How do we deal with it without it being automatically, there's too many people in Africa, or too many people in India, or too many people in China? By the way, China totally understands the idea of overpopulation, has already tried to institute a policy to deal with it, which they've since pretty much given up on, but because it's very hard. It's a very hard thing to deal with. It's a very difficult situation. It's a very difficult discussion. It's a very difficult conversation. But if you don't have the conversation, if you just shut down the conversation saying like, no, it's terrible, it's just stupid, it doesn't make sense, it's just ridiculous. If you just shut it down, then, the same problem is still going to stare you in the face. And by the way, here's a news flash. Nature doesn't give a shit about human rights. Nature doesn't care about being racist. Nature is actually going to be hella racist when climate change starts taking people out. It's going to be the poor. It's going to be the people who are, the most food insecure. It's going to be the people, with the most amount of people with the least amount of resources, which are going to go first. And that's not going to have anything to do with, a policy or a conversation or, an idea around how to deal with it. No, nature's just going to start taking people out, and nature's not going to give a shit. Nature doesn't care about human rights. Nature doesn't give one shit about human rights. Humans do, which is good. So if you really care about human rights, maybe the thing to do would be to have a conversation around it, so that we could have a compassionate, answer or logical solution before it becomes something that's designed by the global elite, to take people out because people aren't willing to take themselves out, or lower their footprints or lower their consumption, or et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, I rambled really long about that, but that's the backlash. Michael Moore is, and he's pretty much popped the bubble of, so many people, right? I'm sure even, there's plenty of progressives who are like, oh my God, I just can't deal with this information, because we're not supposed to actually let in the idea that we possibly could be more screwed than we think we are, or that we possibly, might have to, not destroy, maybe not destroy is the word, but greatly reduce our entire way of living in order to deal with it. Osama number 5, boom. Anthony Davis, bam. I'm Sweet Leaf Ramble On. It's why we are here. Indeed. So, anyways, it's good because, I mean, that documentary, I think, is something that a lot of probably elites, a lot of the people that have their hands on the levers of power don't want people to see that documentary. They do not want people to understand the situation. But it's a little late because it's out there. Here's something really funny. This happened in the chat yesterday, and I don't know if this is a real account or not, but, someone named FBI showed up and said, "What is happening?" Looks pretty official. I don't know if this is the actual... I tried to look for an FBI account after the video, and I found one. The FBI actually does have a YouTube account, but it says FBI-Federal Bureau of Investigation. So this could or could not be the actual FBI, but it's funny because I've been talking about intelligence agencies being part of the whole YouTube thing. But the greatest part about this was Osama's response to the FBI guy. FBI, I have a CGI 767 for you. That was very good. Very quick thinking there, Osama. I enjoyed that. Anyways, whether that was somebody trolling as the FBI or the actual FBI, obviously we all know that everything is monitored and everything is monitored on the internet on some level. So, be careful, just watch yourself and the things that you say and do. I am not endorsing any kind of violence on this channel, nor am I endorsing any kind of property destruction or anything like that. So that's not what's going on here. We're just talking about the inevitable of climate change and other problems. Yeah, no, I saw that. Ryan Gorman says Michael Moore is ignoring Jordan Chariton's reporting about Flint water. And I find that weird because obviously Michael Moore is from Flint, and he's, that this is something that would seem to be right in his wheelhouse. So I don't know what's going on with that. I'm not sure. Somebody said, hold on, I missed something here. Judy Truitt says, I must have blocked that FBI person because they don't appear on my screen. And that's what I was wondering too, because that's why I went and screenshotted it. Because I was like, does anybody else see this person in the chat? Or is it only me? But obviously Osama saw him. Black Bear News, where everything is connected, including the NSA. Indeed. Yeah, I don't know why he's ignoring it. Honestly, I don't know. But anyways, let's move into some stories. I know this is a little weird to start this video off with, but there's been a release or an admission by the Pentagon that some of these UFO sighting tapes that are actually taken by the Navy are real, or they really don't know what they are. They've been out there for a while, so it wasn't like big news. But the thing that they're not including, did you all see this one from the ISS? This is crazy because this was taken from the ISS, the International Space Station. And this is this craft that they took a picture of. I'll just let it keep playing, and it goes up, up, up. They follow it for a long time, and then it goes up to the top of the screen and goes, shoop! It like disappeared, like real fast, going out away from Earth. Don't know if you've all seen this footage, but anyways, I'll link this and you guys can watch it. I just wanted to hit that very quickly. But interesting though, that this has been kind of, they've been teasing around the edges of admitting that they have footage of things that they don't understand what they are, and that this is actual footage, etc. But yeah, pretty crazy though. That space station footage is really wild. There's a lot of it too. I mean, you can probably just YouTube it. Just YouTube ISS UFO footage. We got friends in high places, indeed. Oceanic Estate says Unreal looks like a hoax. I don't know. Who knows? The thing that doesn't look hoaxy to, it's not space junk because it actually propelled itself of its own energy source, like out of the atmosphere or out, above, up and away out, from the space station. So I don't know. Maybe it could be. I don't know. But it's apparently real footage from the space station. It's been, out there for a little while. Chris Lai, one of ours, indeed. That is a whole other subject that I don't have time to get into. But anyways, let's move on. Back on Earth. This is happening. Riots in the streets of Lebanon in the midst of a currency crash and surge in food prices. Has anybody else noticed that the price of food is going up and up and up, like the unidentified ship that the ISS saw? It's just a little blurb. Army vehicles were set on fire and dozens of local banks targeted after anti-government protesters clashed with security forces. A plunge in the local currency and exorbitant food prices is fueling the crisis in Lebanon. The Lebanese Red Cross confirmed multiple people were injured in the riots. Not so good. We're going to see more of that happening in the very near future. Oceanic State, breathe in the 5G. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the situation, we're seeing massive food lines in the United States. Even, other people are having, certain countries, issues, with getting food and with being locked down and having their economies falter and fall apart. Question is, does this accelerate into a worldwide economic meltdown? Guyo Smith says UFO footage to distract us from rising food prices. Well, I've heard that too. It's funny, a lot of people on the old Facebook were like, yeah, why did they release this now? To get everybody like, ooh, look, aliens, while all kinds of finaglery is happening in our economy. So let's move on to this story I wanted to cover from Robert Scribbler. Remember Robert Scribbler? It's been a little while since we checked in on Robert. But this looked like an interesting article. No, COVID-19 didn't stop the climate crisis, but it's interacting with it in a bad way. As we stand in the grips of one major global crisis, one whose first wave of mass casualties may finally be starting a merciful downslope, on April 27th, 2020. It's important not to lose sight of the other larger one. Yes, I'm talking about the climate crisis, and as I mention it, I would be remiss to fail to note that one is not like the other. In particular, the climate crisis is much worse when measured over longer timescales and taken in total. In an April 21 address ahead of Earth Day, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres stated, "Currently, all eyes are on the COVID-19 pandemic, the biggest test the world has faced since the Second World War. We must work together to save lives, ease suffering, lessen the shattering economic and social consequences, and bring the disease under control. But at the same time, let us not lose focus on climate change. The social and economic devastation caused by climate disruption will be many times greater than the current pandemic. Truth, uncomfortable as it may be. The reason is that the climate crisis is on a path of escalating damage and danger so long as we continue burning fossil fuels, one that does not relent if the carbon emission itself does not permanently abate, one that in the broader sense is capable of spinning off multiple sub-crises or harmfully amplifying and influencing others, or in a sense that is in a micro way more specific to the present pandemic. As we touched on earlier in this web book, climate crisis can help to worsen and spread new infectious diseases. COVID-19, air pollution, deforestation, warm weather, illnesses, and health systems impacted by climate crisis. In the context of the present COVID-19 pandemic, the climate crisis and its driver, fossil fuel-based pollution, produces a number of harmful infectious illness interactions that are worth pointing out. Namely, the air pollution that drives the climate crisis can increase the death rate from COVID-19. The deforestation that also helps to drive the climate crisis can serve as a driver for the emergence of a new coronavirus-based illness like COVID-19. That COVID-19, like Ebola, is a novel infectious illness from a typically warmer weather region, and that the climate crisis has deleterious impacts on the global health system that challenges our ability to manage such a wide-ranging pandemic outbreak. As we'll glimpse below, COVID-19's interaction with climate change, denial, and its related anti-science bent has also been particularly harmful. Second hottest January through March on record for 2020. A larger update for the climate crisis, however, takes in a couple of basic data points that show we are still on a very damaging and destructive climate pathway. One, that the COVID-19 based economic slowdown and related temporary reductions of emissions by itself cannot halt. More on this later. A path we won't effectively depart from unless we exit the COVID-19 pandemic by enabling a rapid transition to clean energy. Remember, Robert Scribbler is a big fan and proponent of the green energy transition, and a related follow-on effort to draw down excess atmospheric carbon. The first key climate crisis data point we'll explore in this installment is provided by the climate experts at NASA GISS, headed by Dr. Gavin Schmidt, and it comes in the form of a global surface temperature analysis for the first quarter of 2020. According to NASA, during the months of January through March 2020, global surface temperatures averaged about 1.19 degrees Celsius above 20th century baseline measures. What about those 19th century baseline measures? What about the 18th century baseline measures? This is about how much above are we to those measures. This is about a 1.41 degrees Celsius departure above, 1880s average, quite a bit higher than the past 5-year baseline at 1.15 C hotter than 1880s average, and just 0.06 C below the record hot first quarter of 2016. Remember, 2016 was an El Nino year, so 2020 being a non-El Nino year, that is not a good sign. It is also disturbingly close to the IPCC identified first climate threshold mark at 1.5 C, a threshold which we are probably still about a decade and a half away. Hold on, pause for laughter. Away from breaching over a 5-year average. So Robert Scribbler thinks we're 15 years away from breaching the 1.5 C mark. Is that right? Over a 5-year average time frame along with present fossil fuel burning pathway, but it's still not fun seeing us so close to it at the present. Alrighty, so apparently we're 1.41 degrees Celsius that we're at that mark. We're that close to 1.5 C, but no El Nino is expected, but possible. And if it does, it would spell more trouble. We'll wait for confirmation on the 2020 temperature trend coming from NASA GIS and Dr. Gavin Schmidt, who has dutifully provided publicly helpful annual temperature path projections during recent years. Regardless, 2020 will likely come uncomfortably close to another record hot year, and such continuing severe global heat is certainly well within a well-established trend of longer-term heating. Atmosphere is still filling up with carbon. Of course, the primary driver of climate crisis is fossil fuel burning and related emissions of greenhouse gases into the Earth's atmosphere. Emissions that have temporarily slowed down, possibly by as much as 5 to 10% for 2020, according to this report by Carbon Brief, but have not halted. So there you go. If we thought we were going to majorly impact carbon emissions, we're going to minorly impact carbon emissions. 5 to 10% is, nothing to shake a stick at. Although we need to do that every single year for the next 15 years. But have not halted, and emissions would have to slow down by a lot more and for a lot longer to start having a positive impact on the Earth's climate system. According to Glenn Peters, research director at Cicero, even if there is a slight decrease in global fossil CO2 emissions in 2020, the atmospheric concentration of CO2 will continue to rise. The atmosphere is like a leaky bathtub. Unless you turn the tap off, the bath will keep filling up with CO2. Statement of basic facts that climate change deniers who attack science are even now trying to confuse. Here's a Al Jazeera tweet. Global CO2 emissions are projected to drop 6% this year because of coronavirus, the biggest drop since World War II. The WMO says that's only temporary and won't stop climate change. It's not a substitute for sustained climate action. Exactly. Guys, give me 1 second. I've got to go check something. I just wanted to check on you. I'm not done yet. All right. Thanks for that. Let's get back to this article. Not only are top voices at Cicero chiming in on the issue of climate crisis and a COVID-19 related temporary economic slowdown, but recently the World Meteorological Organization issued its own statement on the matter, noting the economic and industrial downturn as a result of the coronavirus pandemic is not a substitute for concerted and coordinated climate action. Indeed, not a substitute. But, it's a really great example of what we can do. What we can do when every news station broadcasts the idea that we're in an emergency and that we need to take emergency action, right? Every news station and government agencies are like, with a big megaphone saying, hey, we got to do this right now. There could be no better blueprint for taking action on climate change, like real substantive action on climate change. If every news station in America or all over the planet and every government agency in every country went, hey, this is an emergency. The likelihood of that happening I don't know. Rich Diana says Robert Fibbler. Indeed. I know a lot of people are not very good fans, big fans of Scribbler. Yeah, because, he's really likes the whole green energy idea. And I think he also likes to downplay the severity of the situation. I think he's like, he's kind of an anti-doomer on the level of Michael Mann. But let's try to not judge him too harshly for that, shall we? He's trying in his way. Let's go back to this. Climate science deniers continue to publicly demonstrate a dangerous incompetence on COVID-19. We could give flight to reason and join in the ranks of science deniers who ignore and refute experts at places like Cicero and the World Meteorological Organization, basically the same set of people who downplay or attack the advice of experts like those at the World Health Organization, nudge, nudge, hint, hint, and ignore facts at our own and everyone else's peril, but we won't. We could listen to people like the current occupant of the White House, but we don't. A known climate science denier who's also spent months attacking public health experts and defunding key disease-fighting groups while also peddling questionable COVID-19 treatments like hydrochloroquine of unproved, potentially harmful effectiveness, who on Thursday, April 23rd, appeared to publicly suggest injecting disinfectants into our bodies as a valid way to fight COVID-19. And yes, this is not a good idea. We all know this. Trump later walked his ridiculous and dangerous statements back while blaming his usual scapegoat, the free press, for his own brazen incompetence. But his most recent fact-free and literal dangerous circus show again put public health at risk with the potential to drive some of those who take his statements verbatim to inflict harm upon themselves. Yeah, okay. Again, if you're taking his statements verbatim and acting on them, then you win the Darwin Award. Meaning, you are going to lose your evolutionary slot in the gene pool. And some might say that's okay. I'm not suggesting you should go. Nobody go inject bleach or anything like that into their system. I do not wish anybody to eat bleach or inject Windex or whatever else into their bodies and cause harm to themselves. Please don't do that. But if you do, you're really, really fucking stupid. It also precipitated public health advisories from officials and makers of bleach. Okay, blah. Anyways. CO2 strikes above 416 parts per million during April of 2020. So instead, we will just do the smart, rational thing and listen to the actual experts. I know many of us already do, but unfortunately, increasingly, obviously, some still do not. World-class scientists who have spent their lives researching the Earth's climate system. Scientists like, of course, Michael Mann is number one on his list. Catherine Hayhoe, Terry Hughes, Dr. Stefan Rahmsdorf, Peter Glick, Gavin Schmidt, Eric Renault, so many more. But, no mention of Guy McPherson, Paul Beckwith, and the atmospheric greenhouse gas indicators for the climate crisis that these scientists follow are still heading in the wrong direction, still building up, still providing more heat trapping capacity for the Earth's atmosphere and larger climate system. At this time, atmospheric CO2 is hitting above 416 parts per million, average on a weekly basis. We are way above the old 350, which was supposed to be some guardrail. This is well above anything seen in at least the last 2.6 to 5.3 million years. That's a scientific fact to pay very, very close attention to, and likely since the middle Miocene, 15 to 17 million years ago. According to the real experts at NOAA, this greenhouse gas is a primary driver of the present Earth system heating we now observe. So both heat and its big driver CO2 are still heading in the wrong direction. And no, the fossil fuel burning tap into the tub didn't stop running. It just turned down a bit, hopefully permanently. But that will depend on what kind of economic stimulus we provide to help get us out of this crisis. Right now, it doesn't look like We're providing the stimulus in the places where it will do the most good, particularly for what kinds of energy systems we decide to stimulate to help get the global economy back up and running, clean energy to help stop the climate crisis and business as usual, fossil fuel burning to keep making it worse when the COVID-19 pandemic ultimately abates. Anyways, hope you all enjoyed that on some level. Yes, Scribbler is a dibbler. on the old severity of climate change spectrum, but he does bring the facts, so we appreciate him for that. Rolf Jander says Paul Beckwith is not really a climate researcher. Is he a scientifically educated guy who comments on it, keeps it in the public eye? Well, it's not his first path of study, but I think he has kind of, steered himself into being, a climatologist on some level. He teaches classes, college courses on climate studies. So I don't know why you wouldn't consider him a climate researcher. I mean, I'm not, I like Paul Beckwith. I'm not an incredible fan of everything that he says or does, but, again, Beckwith brings the facts and tries to do a very good, he does a very good job bringing the facts. He is a scientist, indeed. Let's move on. Well, this is either, I don't know, some kind of good news. This is, from this oilprice.com. If you want to take a quick look at the WTI crude is at $12.37. That is amazing and pretty awesome when it's that low. $8 a barrel here, $14 a barrel here, $14 a barrel here. OPEC basket 14. This is really awesome if you hate fossil fuels and the fossil fuel industry. This is this is something to rejoice around. Low oil prices may kill off the next nuclear boom before it begins. This is also great news. After a decade-long bear market, uranium has suddenly turned into a raging bull in an otherwise dismal market for commodities. Uranium prices have surged 35% over the past 30 days to trade at $33.30 a pound, a level they last touched 4 years ago. Thanks to shutdowns of critical mines at Canada's Cameco and Kazakhstan's Kazatomprom, suppliers of more than half of the global uranium consumption. Did y'all know that? They supply more than half of the global uranium consumption. Bloomberg has quoted Cantor Fitzgerald as stating that the shutdowns have wiped out 46 million pounds of uranium, good for 35% of annual global uranium output over 3 weeks, in large part due to the coronavirus crisis. This is awesome. This coronavirus thing is doing wonderful things for the planet, and it's shutting down uranium mines. This is wonderful news. Did you guys know this was happening? I didn't know this was happening. The rally comes at a time when the Trump administration appears hell-bent on reviving the country's faltering uranium industry, ostensibly in the pursuit of energy independence and also for national security purposes. Of course, yes. Whatever the right direction is we want to go, Trump is going as fast as he can in the wrong direction, so there's always that. The third nuclear gold rush could be dead in the water amid low energy prices and stiff public opposition toward a sector that has increasingly fallen out of favor. But if you think, anyways, I was going to say, Joe Biden would just take us in the same direction that Trump is going, just slightly slower. So that's the wonderful world of Joe Biden. On Thursday, the Nuclear Fuel Working Group made recommendations to the U.S. administration to open up, this is horrible right here, 1,500 acres outside of the Grand Canyon for uranium production, arguing that the country needs to beef up domestic production to avoid an over-reliance on foreign sources. Let's hope that this does not come to pass. The organization has recommended spending $1.5 billion over 10 years buying uranium from American producers to create a uranium stockpile that would necessitate buying about 10 million pounds a year. The working group's report claims that the United States also needs more uranium for two other purposes. Low enriched uranium for the production of tritium for nuclear weapons. Oh boy. Through the 2040s, and highly enriched uranium to be used as fuel for Navy nuclear reactors through the 2050s. Anyways, yeah. So they're trying to ramp up production in the U.S. Not good. Not good at all. I'm not going to read this whole thing, guys. But the good news, the upshot of this is that for now, uranium mining and production is way down. And you also need the fossil fuels and the infrastructure to continue to keep the uranium market going. Bad news, you need fossil fuels and infrastructure to keep nuclear plants from melting down, so there's that. Moving on, there's a lot to cover today. Tyson Foods chairman warns the food supply chain is breaking. In recent weeks, the poultry producer has suspended operations at plants across the country. The chairman of Tyson Foods is warning that millions of pounds of meat will disappear from the national food supply chain as the coronavirus outbreak forces food processing plants to shutter. The food supply chain is breaking, John Tyson wrote in a full-page advertisement published Sunday in the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. There will be limited supply of our products available in grocery stores until we are able to reopen our facilities that are currently closed, he wrote in an advertisement, which also published as a blog post on the company's website. All right, poor poultry producers. Poor poultry producers. In recent weeks, the major poultry producer has suspended operations at plants across the country. Company halted operations Wednesday at an Iowa plant that is crucial to the nation's pork supply. Again, bad news for humans that want to eat meat. Really good news for, hopefully, little piggies and chickies that want to stay alive. But yeah, there's been outbreaks of coronavirus at different meat processing plants. The Agriculture Department addressed supply chain concerns in a statement Monday. The food supply chain is critical industry in the United States, and Secretary Perdue, remember Sonny Perdue, fully recognizes the need to keep workers and inspectors safe during the COVID-19 national emergency. USDA recognizes and supports the efforts of private industry and companies, blah, 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 Chamber of Commerce, keeping capitalism alive, keeping meat on your shelves. It's not good news for people that obviously need to eat food and they might be meat eaters, but me being a vegetarian, I'm secretly all about it. Raza Remen says COVID has been so good for the planet. Maybe we should keep it. Discuss. Chris Lai, food chain is collapsing. Get back to work. Yeah. Sonny Perdue. I can't wait till he quits his job as Secretary of Agriculture and goes back to playing banjo, bluegrass banjo, in the Sonny Perdue 4. Let's move on. Again, food supply chains in a critical state It's been a little while since we visited the world of George Sacroclides. This is his latest blog post from yesterday, The Hypernormalisation of Sin. There is one thing that Christianity is right about, despite all the lies, manipulation, scaremongering, murder, and propaganda. It is right about the original sin. It all started with an apple, the humblest, simplest, most benign of things. But soon the apple was replaced by a bar of gold. The bar of gold was replaced by the hunger for power and the corporation. The apple was replaced by a dirty yellow plastic container filled with fossil fuel. From the moment we touched the dirty container, we became dirty ourselves. From that point on, we didn't know what being clean was. We did know how to blame it on someone else, though. It was all Adam and Eve's fault. They fucked us up. Our life of crime on this planet was now fully justified. We gave ourselves full license to pursue a life of greed, murder, exploitation, and destruction. We were just acting out what our parents taught us. We were the children of paradise junkies. The concept of the original sin was a hypernormalization strategy by the church. It made sin acceptable. It made us all believe that sin was part of our fabric. And it gave the church the license to conduct its own sins. That, spot on, George. Right? It's okay, you're forgiven. Or you will be forgiven. Or you can be forgiven. But, in the meantime, and it gave the church the license to conduct its own sins: capitalism, greed, slavery, exploitation, extinction. They all became the future incarnations of the apple. We built our entire civilizations on the concept of profit, of exponential growth, of natural exploitation, of destroying things that are sacred, priceless, and timeless. But this planet is still sacred. It was born sacred. The planet's circular systems mean that sin is a boomerang. Sin is an energy that comes back to you. Sin is karmic. And we are approaching our karma. Maybe I should have called this video Karmic Boomerang instead of Karmic Boom. Same difference. The final sin is around the corner and will complete the cycle, to be continued or not. Always good stuff from George Sacroclides. Another quick story here. Military assistance requested as flooding hits downtown Fort McMurray. This is in Alberta, right? I know it's in Canada. Alberta, yes. Let's go back to the story. You guys are watching me search that up. That's always good. With rising river levels in Fort McMurray, Alberta, threatening homes and businesses in the heart of the communities downtown, the mayor is asking for military assistance to limit the damage. Flooding caused by ice jams in the rapidly thawing Athabasca River worsened overnight Sunday, prompting a new round of mandatory evacuation orders, a decision to block access to the new downtown area, and a boil water advisory. Help has been requested from Canada's armed forces and the federal government to deal with this new crisis in the northern Alberta community. Don Scott, mayor of the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo, said in a post on social media. More extreme weather situations from quick melt. I'm sure we're going to see lots of flooding this year again, due to increased rainfall levels and increased melt. Are they going to be as bad as they were last year when we had the entire Mississippi region flooded out, as well as other places in the Midwest? We shall wait and see. Okay, lastly in this video, the story around Joe Biden is beginning to, well, not beginning to, but it is really steamrolling forward. There's, more and more people are coming out. A former neighbor of Joe Biden's accuser has come forward to corroborate her sexual assault account, saying Reade discussed the allegations in detail in the mid-90s. Rose McGowan, famous Me Too proponent, and a true believe women spokeswoman. She's like, look, we have to take this seriously. It doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or what side of the aisle you decide to be on. The story is getting bigger and bigger. Recently, just today, I saw on Twitter that Alyssa Milano, who has been caping for Joe Biden, who has been kind of a Tara Reade. She actually smeared Tara Reade and said it was a false accusation, and that she was not to be listened to. And everybody was like, "Oh, really, Alyssa Milano, Miss Me Too Milano." Yeah, she smeared Tara Reade, and then today came out on Twitter and said, "I think she needs to be listened to." So this story is actually starting to get bigger and bigger, and it's going to get too big for the Democrats and for Biden to ignore. Obviously, there was a Biden dropout was trending on Twitter the other day, and then Twitter removed that hashtag from Twitter because we don't want, golly gee, we don't want this kind of talk on Twitter. And then, people are saying, come back Bernie. So, they canceled the primary in New York, and they removed Bernie. They removed everybody who dropped out of the race off of the ballot. So the only one left was Biden. So they decided to cancel the primary. And people were like, hold on a second. Nobody agreed to that. You guys just did this all on your own. What they're trying to do is make sure that there's no way that Bernie can come back in. And there was something trending on Twitter, come back Bernie, which actually makes total and perfect sense, right? The problem is, in order for Biden to actually face some kind of real judgment, some kind of real light of day on this, people in the Democratic Party are going to have to start calling him out. And actually the person to do that would be Bernie Sanders. So the only way that Bernie Sanders would ever come back, the only way that Bernie Sanders would ever be seen as the de facto nominee if Joe Biden were to drop out is if he actually said, look, this isn't all right. This is a big problem. And you need to answer, for this. There needs to be an investigation. There needs to be, some kind of attention paid to this. Bernie actually needs to stand up to the DNC and to Joe Biden and say, this is wrong. This candidate is extremely, painfully flawed and will not beat Donald Trump. Bernie Sanders would have to do that. And the problem is that Bernie Sanders will not do that. And so you could hashtag come back Bernie all day long. Bernie Sanders himself will not come back because he was never there to begin with, because he was never going to stand up to the Democratic Party in the way that would have been necessary for him to win the nomination. And I just also read somewhere today that there was supposed to be some kind of press conference where Bernie Sanders was going to drop out and give all his delegates to Joe Biden, which is just phenomenally heartbreaking and disgusting. Why he would do that, I don't know. He has zero leverage now, zero weight. He dropped out. He has, no power. Nobody's listening to him. The DNC does not care about him. Now that he's dropped out, he has zero power. Now that they're starting to strip him. Oh, I also saw that California was looking to strip him of his delegates as well. Insane. The problem is this story is going to get bigger, and there's going to be nobody there to stand up to him and stand up to the DNC. The DNC is walking into certain and utter doom. There's absolutely no way that he's going to survive this. There's no way he's going to win. There's no way he's going to beat Trump. They're going to maybe even try to replace Biden, and that's going to even look worse, right? Because if they try to replace Biden with somebody else, everybody's going to be like, no, thank you. No, thank you, DNC. This is just a mess. This is a big fat mess, and it's getting messier by the day. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that Bernie Sanders couldn't have, been strong enough to stand up against this bullshit. It's unfortunate that he couldn't have been, the person to say like this, no more. He is not that person, and it's really heartbreaking. It's really, really heartbreaking. Anyways, guys, that is all the time I have. Thank you so much for jumping in this chat with me. Thank you for your ears, your eyes, and your conscience. I will be back tomorrow at the same bat time. Until next time, peace.